Hello, everyone. My name is Spencer. Welcome back to the Leadership Launch series, the series where I help build leaders build themselves and their teams. Today, I'm going to go over something where if you don't have this in your leadership, you don't have leadership at all. And it's very, very critical, which is why I wanted to make this one of my earlier videos. And what we're going to be talking about today is integrity. Integrity. A lot of you, I'm sure, have heard this before. Today, I'm going to go down a little bit of a beam path with you. I'm going to go down something that you're maybe not quite used to hearing about integrity, and it may rub up against you a little bit. You may feel it a little bit difficult to grasp, and that's what I'm aiming for here. Not in making it hard for you, more because when you truly grasp integrity this way, it's so much easier for you to operate in anything you want to do, and it will always benefit you in your leadership. So let's get straight into it. Going into integrity, like I've just had here, going into integrity, there's usually two camps that people fall under. People think if you keep with integrity, you are good. And if you don't keep with integrity, if you don't keep your promises, you are bad. Okay? This is how most of the world works in terms of integrity. There's also a different way to view integrity. Okay? Now, when I say a different way, there's other ways that integrity can be expressed. And I'm going to use a building. In fact, I'm going to use a steel beam as the example. So with a steel beam, in fact, I'll just make this a square for the sake of myself here. Terrible square, but who cares? Up. There we go. Much better. In the case of a beam, this too is an integrity. It is integrous by design. It is an integrity. And that's the really cool part here. Now, what ends up happening with this beam is it's whole, it's complete, it's perfect for the design of what a beam is. When the beam gets crushed, let's say that a car, just gonna draw a car here, beautiful car, holy cow. Thank goodness I'm not an artist. If a car is going into this, then what ends up happening is that it's going to crash into the beam. And when it crashes into the beam, it's going to be crushed. It's going to be absolutely crushed into the beam. It's going to look absolutely awful, right? It's not going to be a beam anymore. In fact, it's going to be all out of whack, and people aren't going to like the beam. Now, when it becomes this way, it's not a bad beam. We don't say that. It's not an integrity, though. It's not whole. It's not complete. It's broken. It's not perfect anymore to the design of what it's supposed to be. And because of that, it's no longer in integrity. Now, what does this mean for us? Because I have to tell you right now, we're not made to be integrous. We break our words all the time. In fact, if we all kept our words, we would probably be robots, because that's how we'd be programmed. Or the closest example I can think of would be Tony Stark, in the sense that if every time he broke his word and he learned from it once, that would be a superpower. His superpower is that he makes one mistake and he learns from it and he never makes it again. That's his superpower. But I'm getting off track here. The point is that we would be robots if we were completely integrous. And I want you to keep that definition of integrity in mind as we go out through the rest of this video. In fact, there's another way I want to put this integrity to you, which is why it's so important to you in your leadership. If you've ever been in basketball before, or any sport, when you're just first starting, what were you? Bad at basketball. You sucked. You weren't good by standards. Again, if you haven't listened to the Principles and Values video, I would. Great lesson in there. When you start off in a sport like basketball, you often have the feeling of either being good or bad at what you're doing. The simplest thing that you can think of is shooting. You think yourself you're either good or bad, or it was a good shot or a bad shot if you had the bucket and you, with the ball, actually shot it in or not, right? It was either a good shot or a bad shot. And the only reason why you determined that it was a good shot or a bad shot was because it went into the outcome that you wanted it to be. Listen to that. Wanted it to be. It went in, which is what you wanted, so you made yourself good. It didn't go in, and not what you wanted, so you made yourself bad. Okay? Now, the thing is that you feel good and bad, feel good and bad. The longer that you practice, the more shots you take, especially when you're now developing yourself as a player on a team, you sometimes do have that good and bad feeling in practice, except you may have heard from your coaches at one point to no longer feel good or bad, but to name what is happening. In fact, this is what my coach did. That I had a real problem in high school where I would be, practicing my shots, practicing my 3 pointers, my free throws, and I would feel really, really bad because I sucked at shooting 3 pointers. And my coach asked me, Spencer, what are you doing wrong? Like, what are you doing that's not helping? I don't know. I'm not making a shot. He's like, Ron, ironically, we're talking about bad and good, wrong and right. He said, no, don't focus on that. Focus on what to adjust next time. Focus on what to change. And slowly but surely, he put me in a position where I wasn't allowed to just think bad or think good about the shots I made or didn't make. He told me to tell him what I didn't do. And it didn't take very long before I kept making shots and I realized I didn't have enough power in my legs. I didn't flick my wrist. I didn't hold the end point. I wasn't having my chest faced up. It was shrunk. All these things. I wasn't locking my hands in place. All these little things about basketball shooting that weren't focused on any of the feeling around it. And what ended up happening is that slowly but surely, when I missed a shot, I didn't think about the fact that it was a bad shot. I think about why didn't the ball go in? I didn't make myself wrong. I thought about what to adjust for next time. Don't get me wrong, when I made a good shot in game, heck yeah, I was excited. It didn't take away though from the back of my mind thinking, okay, what's to adjust for next time? And this is something that's said all the time around people who are starting to lead or help other leaders to lead is that don't think about what went wrong or what went well. Think about what to adjust for next time to make sure that you have a better chance of achieving the result you want from a completely taking the morality, taking the ethics, taking the feeling out of it. If we were to really think about this at a high level, think about the NBA. Let's think about Steph Curry. Do you think that Steph Curry thinks about, oh man, it was a good shot. Oh, bummer, it was a bad shot. No, I can't even tell you how many shots he does in the gym a day. I can tell you for sure though that if he felt bad for every shot he missed, he wouldn't be as great as a shooter as he is today. He was dedicated to his craft, dedicated to it, to just shooting. And I guarantee you, with him and the best coaches in the world, they just kept adjusting what they needed to do. Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan are prime examples of this. Michael Jordan, I can't even remember the stat off the top of my head. He missed plenty of shots. In fact, I believe his stat was about 50% of the shots he would actually make. You know, he kept taking shots though. He didn't think of all the shots he didn't make and it's like, oh, throw in the towel. I'm not good at this. I'm not good. I'm not right to be here, whatever the case. Even Kobe Bryant, when he realized that he could shoot and it was in line, but it wasn't getting to the basket, it fell short, he realized that that just meant he needed to be stronger. His arms and his core, his legs need to be stronger for it to go in. And of course, with Kobe, it didn't take him too long before he did that. And I really want you to keep that in mind. Take the morality, take the ethics, take the feeling out of integrity, and just think of it in that way, being whole, being complete, being authentic, truly authentic, being in the perfect peace of mind that you are in line with what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to do as a leader. The next point being that integrity is like a muscle. And most of us, or any of us who've been to a gym before, we understand what it takes to grow muscle. You lift the heavy weights with your skinny arms, right? And you keep lifting up and down, up and down, up and down. And eventually, what happens is that by the end of the workout, your muscles in your arm have torn. There's little tears that happen in your muscle. Just gonna make that little tears in the muscle itself that are determining whether or not the muscle stays the same or if it's going to grow bigger. It's the same thing with your integrity, with your word. It's the same thing with any skill, really. And people take that for granted all the time. You need to have more and more breakdowns. You need to have more and more, while tiring out the muscle more and more in order for you to really appreciate and use the skill. Like a muscle, if you weren't keeping your word, if you're not trying to make promises and trying to keep them, then your muscles are going to atrophy. They're going to grow smaller because they're not being used, because there's no energy, there's no intention behind it, there's no intention of improving that skill. And that's why people's muscles don't grow that large, because they often don't work it out. If you do work out, you often get a pump and you feel really good. You're like, yeah, yeah. You know, you really put yourself through the ringer and now you feel good, you look good. It's the same thing with integrity. When we curl a weight, when we curl whatever you want to call it, 35, 45, 10 pounds, who cares? When we can't curl it anymore, we don't say, F, I'm bad. Screw it, I'm horrible. Man, I was wrong for trying this out. All we say is that I'm tired. I'm tired. My muscles are weak now because I tire them out. It's the same theme. And when you start taking integrity in this way, you as a skill, not as a morality thing, as a principle, a value of yours that you align yourself with, not something to judge others by and just judge yourself by, all of a sudden, the way that you keep your promises to yourselves and others are different. Because if you don't use your integrity that often, you'll say willy-nilly whatever you want because you know you're not going to keep it anyways. In fact, some people are afraid to give their word because they often experience themselves as bad or wrong because they don't keep their word. And then they don't keep promises. They don't try to keep agreements. They become flaky. No opportunity for you to make a commitment because you always have something there to make it so that you can't commit. There is expectation setting and setting up the proper success for your integrity. And then there's also people who say, yes, I'll do this, but if something happens, then don't blame me. Again, they give themselves an out because they don't want to be out of integrity, because everyone makes them wrong. This leads into the next point, which is very crucial. It's not wrong that you feel bad or that you feel like you're wrong in integrity. It's not bad at all, because people, we all grew up like this. My leaders, we've all grown up like this. When you were a kid, when you were like a little springly, a little kid, let's have your little ball here. When you were a kid and you had a parent, there were more times than not, I'm sure, that you got in trouble more than you wanted to, you know? And let's say, for example, you had this ball and you broke the cookie jar, right? There's imagine a broken plate there or a broken jar, whatever you want to call it. And when you broke this jar, what happened with your parents? What did they say? That was wrong. That was bad of you. I'm disappointed. All these things. And what did you feel? You felt bad. You probably said, I'm sorry. You were made wrong. And over time, because of this, you started to deceive. You started lying. You started avoiding. You started feeling bad. And then just let it simmer. You started to not honor your word or clean up your mess at all. You start to go against your integrity. All of a sudden, instead of you actually keeping your word, instead of you being accountable to what has happened and cleaning up the mess, you're not actually dealing with it. You're not putting yourself on the courts. And this leads into the idea of you being on the court, which is a completely different video that I'll touch on later. There's a couple stories I have that really reflect this though, and I really want to hit this home with it because when I realized this for myself and my integrity to not feel wrong again, to not feel bad, then it completely changed the way that I make my promises and completely changed the way of what I've expected from myself and from others and how I've dealt with it when I don't keep my word and when others don't keep their word. And I'll tell you two stories about this. One story first came from volleyball. I love volleyball. I play it all the time. And my coach taught me this. He said, "Don't tell me you're sorry. Do better next time. Or at least put in more effort next time to what you want to achieve." And that stuck with me haphazardly. I didn't specifically pay attention to it that much. It just always stuck in the back of my head, and occasionally I came back to it. I remember, especially nowadays, I play some rec volleyball, and I would have a teammate that every time they did something that wasn't favorable, like shank a pass or didn't set the ball properly, every single time they just looked at everyone and said, "Man, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I know I screwed up. Like, I'm sorry. That's my bad, whatever." And I kid you not, he was starting to bring down all the energy in the room. Everyone was starting to make him bad because he kept feeling bad about himself. He was attracting that kind of energy from people. And kid you not, he shanked the pass, and that was the last I had of my patience at that point. And I took him aside and I said, "Look, I don't want you to say sorry to me for the rest of the game." And he looked puzzled. He's like, "What? But I messed up." I was like, "I'm fine with you messing up. I'm not fine with you saying sorry. Don't say sorry. Say, next time, I'll do better. Next time, I'll do this instead." And I kid you not, for the rest of the game, yes, he did still miss some passes. Not nearly as much. It's almost like a switch turned on in his mind where instead of saying I'm bad and just feeling or doing any of those things I listed out before, he actually addressed where he wasn't being integritous, which was him giving his best efforts or him making mistakes in the game. He acknowledged that there was going to be mistakes. He acknowledged the fact that he was going to mess up. And he also, because he acknowledged that, he changed the way that he approached everything. All of a sudden, his movements got less sloppy. All of a sudden, he really did do his best to not say my bad. There was a couple times it kind of left like my, from his mouth. I'm telling you though, when I started to see that, it really clicked in my own head, ironically, that that is how integrity works too. You can't you can't feel bad. You just can't. Because if you feel bad and if you just say I'm sorry, it doesn't actually clean up the mess. It doesn't change anything. The mess is still there. Someone still needs to clean it up. And the other side doesn't even necessarily want your apology all the time. Now, don't get me wrong. If you did mess up, then yes, you apologize. But they don't even want you to feel that bad. They just want the mess cleaned up. When I was running my own painting business, there was a point where one of my guys really messed up on the job. Really messed up. And I felt bad because I set all these expectations. I was out of integrity for what I was going to say I was going to do. Again, I made myself feel bad. And I remember I had a conversation with my coach at one point, and she told me, like, "Look, it doesn't matter if you feel bad. Don't feel bad. You still have to clean up the mess. So why are you going to punish yourself twice?" Hit me like a bag of bricks, that one, because she was completely right in that instance. Why would I punish myself more for not doing what I said I was going to do than just simply adjusting, acknowledging, and correcting my mistake? Now, mistakes happen. There are things that happen that you don't want them to go, and there's results that happen that aren't what you want. Feeling bad about it, adding meaning to it, doesn't help you. especially in your leadership, because when you do that to yourself, guess what you do? You do that to others. Now your team feels bad. Now your team's saying sorry but not correcting their mistakes. Now your team are deceiving you and lying to you and avoiding to you and withholding themselves from having the space, the safety to say, "You're right. I messed up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to either take 10 minutes from my lunch break, or what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to cut this activity off shorter to correct this before I move on. And what I'm going to do next time is ensure to put reminders on my phone, or I'm going to just stay at work until it gets done. Can I get approval for that?" Whatever the case is. I'm not saying go against the boundaries that your workplace has set. I'm just saying take the time, really just authentically take the time to correct your mistakes so next time it doesn't happen. If you at least show that you intended for it not to happen for next time and you did put the effort in, your leader sees that. And as a leader, you see that. The final point that I'm going to make for this video is, why do we go out of our way to lie, to avoid, to deceive, to feel bad, to say I'm sorry for when we break our word? It's because we don't want to look bad. As humans and individuals, we don't want to look bad. We'd rather look good. You know, everyone takes the praise when they've done something good, and no one is there when they've done something wrong, right? Or at least no one wants to be there. That's the next point you gotta realize, is that a lot of times when you've broken your word, you'll know. You'll know when you're being out of integrity with yourself and your word. In fact, any wall that you're up against in your life, any wall here that you're having a, oh, looks like my marker died. I'm just gonna switch markers. 1 second. Any wall that you have here that you're going up against, and let's say you have this wall and you've been pushing and pushing, and pushing, and you've been trying so hard to push past this wall. You keep pushing against it. The reason why you're not pushing past that wall is because this wall is a broken promise that you haven't dealt with. There's something that you haven't told someone. There's something about your finances you haven't addressed. There's something about your relationship that isn't complete. There's something about your health that you haven't acknowledged, and that's keeping you from the results you want to achieve. Because of that, you keep pushing, and you're pushing against yourself because you're not addressing it. When you have this in your life, you feel truly authentic. When I really grasp this in my life and I start to live by it, I'm really authentic. I feel like my true self. I am complete. I am aligned in what I want to do, and I do it. There's no right and wrong. If there is something I missed, if I'm not adjusting, I kid you not, I will say out loud, I have a breakdown. I will break down. And I was like, shoot, I have a breakdown. I just realized I haven't kept my word with this. And I'll sit there and I'll take the feeling out of it. I take the morality out of it. I take the ethics out of it. And I sit there. What are we going to do for next time? And an easy one is time. People are late for things all the time. When I realized I was going to be late, then instead of just putting it in my calendar and doing nothing, I made sure that I authentically put the effort in to make sure I was on time. So what's that mean? I put a timer on. I had multiple reminders. I made sure that I had a call with someone. And I asked them, like, hey, can you make sure that while I'm on the phone, it was actually my girlfriend. I asked her, hey, can you make sure that this time you remind me so I can go and be on time? And when you put that authentic effort in, that authentic intention, you feel secure in yourself and you have more confidence because you know you've done your best to keep your word. That's just time. You can go back to your finances. For a huge thing for me was budgeting at the time. It was really hard for me to stick with a budget. Why? Because I wasn't acknowledging the fact that I've broken all the budgets I had before, and I also wasn't acknowledging the fact that authentically, I don't feel okay about a budget because I feel restricted. I felt like I was in a cage. And when I authentically said that to, I can't even remember who I was asking. I was asking someone about my finances at one point, and they said, "Man, thank you for telling me that because most people aren't willing to admit that, and I know it, and they know it. They aren't willing to say. And here's what we're gonna do because of it." All of a sudden, the light shades came up, and I had freedom in operating how I wanted to in that area, even with health, right? In health, people cheat on their diets all the time. If you had a diet or an accountability buddy and you call them every time they said, "Hey man, I'm feeling a craving, I'm feeling like going to Burger King, can you just make sure I stay on the phone and that I don't go there?" Yeah, man, of course. Man, I'm telling you, there was a point where I was eating a lot of fast food and my girlfriend, I felt really ashamed and guilty because I went to go grab fast food and then I sat in the parking lot, I ate my food, and I felt a little good, but then I felt really bad. And when I called my girlfriend, I let her know because I knew it was out of integrity. She was like, "Hey, why didn't you tell me sooner?" And I realized was because I didn't, well, one, I didn't have that in place. And two, I made myself feel bad for even thinking about calling her and looking bad. Again, this all comes back to looking bad. Any place where you don't want to look bad in, when you break your word, that's usually what keeps you from speaking your word to people. That's what makes you lose trust with yourself because you don't want to look bad, but now you've diminished your word. And when you've diminished your word, you've diminished the power of acting itself. So, a couple takeaways for you. When you break your word, do not feel bad. Okay? Do not feel bad. Do not. I refuse for you to do that. If I could, I mean, you can do whatever you want. I really encourage you to not do that. Two, tell the breakdowns. Tell the breakdowns. Tell the times where you feel like you're going to look bad. Okay? And three, acknowledge that the reason why you feel this way is because you are trying not to look bad. Now remember, take morality and ethics away from your integrity. Think of it like a basketball shot. At a certain point, you're going to be taking so many shots that you're not thinking about whether you feel bad or feel good. You're thinking about what you can adjust, what you can change to make it better. And that's why if you can't have integrity, you can't have your leadership because it affects you and everyone around you. And if you can't authentically be yourself and be able to acknowledge when you've messed up, you can't lead because you're an example and won't people will follow that example you set for them, and that's a bad example. Bad in the sense that you're not going to create the impact you want and you're not going to get the results you want either. So I hope that this was educational. I hope that this really helps you out with your integrity. And if there is anything else that you have questions on, please give a comment below, and I'd love to see you all in the next video.